What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Big Five Pod, episode number 13. Hope you all had a happy holidays. This is our first one since after Christmas and Hanukkah. We still have New Year's to go, so the holidays aren't completely over yet. But we're getting there. So hope you guys had a nice time with family and everything. I am of course English again. Your host, co-host Kyle Morello, and next to me here, Jake Copestick. How are we doing? How was your Christmas?
It was great, as it always is. Good to see my cousins, good to see my family, hang out, relax for a little bit. Last couple weeks, for me, graduating, trying to get stuff done, finishing an internship, it's kind of been a lot of running around for me. Sure, it's a busy time for everyone, so it's nice to have, especially Christmas, and see everybody relax. Santa was good to me, just like he is. He was great to me again this year, just like he is every year. Brought me a Big Five book. The forewords done by Dan Baker, which is pretty cool. Phil Martelli, Riley Massimino, a bunch of people, Big Five legends are in that book, so I was happy about that. But overall, it was a good holiday. Christmas Eve was fun too. Got to reconnect with a lot of people, see my family. So it was a good time. Nice to take a little bit of break from hoops. Nothing against basketball, but it was nice to have a little bit of a reset and relax for a little bit. How about you? How was Hanukkah?
It was good. Hanukkah was good. I spent most of it with my girlfriend and her family, which actually I wanted to segue that into this new partial of my new background here, if you haven't noticed yet. Right to my right shoulder here, that is our logo. That is the Big Five Podcast logo. And we did a secret. Well, I guess it's not Secret Santa. It's 12 out of 13 of us are Jewish, but a secret snowflake is what we called it. With my girlfriend's family and her extended family. And Shelby's my girlfriend. Shelby's dad had me and hit up our friend here, Jake Copestick, via LinkedIn, which is funny, and said, "Hey, can you send me over a high-res image of the logo? I have a gift idea for Kyle," and he explained everything. So he gave me this. It's like a metal thing. I think they got it on Etsy. I think Etsy, first of all, great website in general for gift giving. But yeah, so this is one of the coolest gifts I think I've ever gotten. It definitely let out a cuss and excitement when I opened it, which is it's probably a little shouldn't have done that, but that's okay. It's okay. I was excited. So yeah, thank you first of all for helping out with that. And now we have an extra Big Five Pod background here. Very excited about that. Also, got a little beard trim today. They went a little short on the mustache, so I didn't fully shave. Beardless Kyle cannot hurt anybody, as Copestick said before the show. Those of you who knew me before I had the beard, but that's okay. Anyway, I'm done rambling. It was good. End of story there. But yeah, great to spend time with her family and my family too. I did see them too. So a lot of fun. So why don't we get into some Big Five basketball? It was not all fun for some of these teams in the Big Five. We're going to start off on a good note first before we get into some of the other stuff. A game that we both predicted right, and you especially on your analysis, I definitely want to get into this. Villanova beating St. John's last week, 78-63. Great game from the Wildcats. Eric Dixon, 18-6 on 7 of 16 from the field. Brandon Slater, 16 on 4 of 8. Daniels and Jordan Longino with 13 each. So definitely had some scoring pouring in there. Impressive stat here, 16 of 17 from the line, though we know with these Nova teams that they're generally good with free throws, as we've seen. Definitely in the Jay Wright era, carrying over a little bit. And they also shot 47.5% from the field, which is not bad at all. So, Copestick, your analysis from this game before the game happened was spot on with, kind of their pace I had mentioned. And then you kind of said, well, that's because they take quick shots in the shot clock. They like to get in transition, blah, blah, blah. What did you see in this game that you had kind of thought you were going to see before the game even started?
So right away, I knew that we all know that St. John's wants to run. They played a very high pace. There was a play in the first half where somebody on Nova made a shot. Andre Curbelo immediately gets the ball, throws a half court pass from out of bounds. They get a quick layup. That's the pace they want to play at. They want to score very, very fast. They want to beat you before you can get set on defense. Because when Nova in this game, when they played in the half court and they slowed it down and St. John's couldn't run and they had to actually burn a bunch of time off the shot clock. They had to work for shots. That's not the way they play. And they took a lot of bad shots and they forced a lot of things right into what Nova wanted them to do, take bad shots. And then Nova could then go down the other end and play at their pace. So St. John's in the first 10 minutes in this game, they were up double digits at one point. They were trapping, they were pressing, they just wanted to make the game chaos and go up and down and make it fast. So I knew that St. John's wanted to try and do that. They're going to come out and try and impose their will and play at the pace that they want to. But when Nova stopped turning the ball over, not allowing the Johnnies to get out in transition, get easy buckets, they slowed this game down. Even when Nova had the chance to take a quick shot on offense that wasn't a transition opportunity, it looked like they were not hesitant, but they're like, hey, let's not make it a track meet. Let's not give them the opportunity to run and take bad shots and let them off easy. Let's work the ball around. Let's try and get into the paint, kick the ball out, get a good shot, drive and get fouled. So I knew that St. John's wanted to impose their will and just kind of muck it up and get a lot of transition opportunities. But good on Nova's part for not allowing them to do that from the end of the first half and the entire second half. This game really flipped right before halftime. Nova forced a couple turnovers, got a couple easy buckets themselves. We're able to make some threes, make some shots. Jordan Longino was huge in this game. Looks like he's finally healthy this year after playing, but kind of battling through some injuries. He was 5 for 5 this game. They can always use a guy off the bench to score. So he was big, but credit to them. Nova played a very good second half, flawless in my opinion. In the half court, they made St. John's have to defend deep into the shot clock, forced them to make some mistakes. And then defensively, if the Johnnies couldn't get an easy one early in the clock and they made them work, they kind of forced the issue and took a lot of bad shots, as I mentioned that they would do. They don't really take great shots. They don't really value possessions too much and just kind of throw anything up there sometimes. So good on Nova for recognizing that. And this is a team that was 11-1 going in this game. Not exactly a great schedule. The one game they lost is when they had to play somebody in Iowa State and travel to them. So Nova was able to take advantage of a team that I don't think this team is bad by any means. I think they can actually sneak into the tournament if they can have a good conference stretch here. But I also think this is a team that isn't as good as that 11-1 record denotes. So this is a good win for Villanova, a good kickoff to conference play for them, because as we're going to talk about coming up here, they have the hardest game to date for them. They have their toughest opponent, venue, team in general. They have their toughest game coming up here tomorrow.
Yeah. And we'll definitely get into that a little bit later in this episode. But yeah, like you said, like St. John's, talented team. We're not gonna act like they're not, but a flawed team and a team that didn't have really a tough schedule. As you mentioned, only the one loss was only to Iowa State before this game. They hadn't really played a ton of their wins weren't quality wins. Is basically what we're getting at. So a good win for Nova, but definitely sorry, I'm like a little sick, so I'm gonna be sniffling, but definitely something to build off of, because as we mentioned, they are going to have a tough opponent coming up here on Wednesday. So that's that. All right. I'm going to blow my nose real quick, but I want you to talk to me about what's happening with our two friends on North Broad Street. We're losing buy games. I guess you can start with La Salle first, because I think we're going to rant a little bit about Temple, but what's going on here? What are we doing here?
Yeah, this was kind of hard to watch in both cases. We know La Salle just got beat by Cincinnati. Wasn't exactly pretty. They had guys, Khalil Brantley finally comes back, comes off the bench. Jameer Brickus isn't available for this game. This was just all around a game that, you talk a lot, you hear Colin Cowherd and people talk about a burn the tape game. This is one that, you want to burn, you never want to think about or see again. So we just talked about Villanova beating a previously 11-1 team that came to their place. And La Salle lost 90-65 against a team in Lafayette that was 1-11 going into that game. Now, Lafayette played a tough schedule. They had to travel places. They were in Miami. They actually played against St. John's. They had played against Penn had gone up there to play them. They played at St. Joe's. So it's a team that moved around a lot. And unfortunately, they took a lot of losses on the chin to some teams that are step up in competition for them. But defensively, La Salle was a mess in this game. Lafayette got whatever they wanted. They shot 32 of 52 from the field, good for over 60%, and they were 15 of 26 from the 3-point line. They were just getting whatever they want. And sometimes you run into a hot team. Sometimes that happens. But the amount of threes that they were giving up, offensive rebounds, kickouts, stuff like that, it just wasn't pretty on the defensive end for La Salle. And I don't really care who you are, how good you are at scoring. In a 40-minute game, 90s, if you give up 90, it's going to be hard to win against anybody, or it doesn't matter how talented you are. It's going to be hard to put up that many points and win. So defensively, they gave up a ton of points. But then offensively, Khalil Brantley has 14, Josh Nickelberry is 10. They didn't have anybody else scoring double digits. So, you couple the defense that just allowed Lafayette to do whatever they wanted to. And then offensively, they didn't really have a consistent guy besides Brantley. They used 5 for 12 in this game, so he didn't shoot a bad percentage. But, outside of him, they didn't really have anybody else that was scoring the ball. So it's just a bad combination. It's a combination that blowouts are going to happen with. But that's certainly a rough one for La Salle, as they got one more game against Howard in the non-conference slate before they jump into A-10 play. But that was a really, really rough one to have at home for them. And then with Temple, I guess we can get into them.
Well, I'll interrupt you first. I just wanted to say a couple points about La Salle too. I mean, like you said, like Brantley didn't play bad. He's been good for them since he's come back and before. But the fact they only got 2 guys in double figures, one of them only having 10 points, and Josh Nickelberry, who hasn't really been good lately, it's concerning. And they were out rebounded 36-22. They were out assisted 24-11. And now they only had 6 turnovers, which is a positive. Considering that I think in the last game they had 23 before this. It was
25. But then again, 25. That just shows you how bad the defense was. That it's not like La Salle was giving away points. It's not like they turned the ball over 20 times or it was going to result in a bunch of points. Like, unfortunately for them, that's just how bad the defense was.
Yeah.
It was
brutal. It was brutal. I mean,
yeah.
Number one, it's a home game. And number 2, it's a bye game to a team that only won 1 game previously. You let up 90 points in 40 minutes, like you said. Like, you're not going to win games that way. You're not going to win games that way against quality opponents. You're sure as hell not going to win games like that against a team that was 111 coming in Lafayette. And no disrespect to Lafayette. I mean, they played a great game. They shot over 60% from the field. Like, it was ridiculous. And they held La Salle only to 41% from the field and 33.3% from 3. But like, this is bad. This is a couple bad showings in a row for La Salle now. So not great. But we can get into this Temple game because that's even worse in my opinion. I thought I had to sneeze. Okay, I held it in. Anyway, they lost to Maryland Eastern Shore at home, 86-78. Again, letting up 86 points in 40 minutes is no better either. Zach Hicks had a good game though, 16 on 5 of 7. Caleb Battle, 15 on 6 of 17. Nick Jourdain helping fill in nicely in the center role, 11 on 4 of 9. They did shoot 48% from the field, only 29.6 from 3 though. These last 2 sets I have here are brutal. They were out rebounded 40-29. And they had 16 turnovers. Now they also forced 16 turnovers. Both teams had 16, but turning the ball over and not getting boards against the team like Maryland Eastern Shore on a bye game at the Leocore Center. I know they're without Jamil Reynolds, but I think there's some alarms that might have to be sounding here with this Temple Owls team. And I could be wrong. I want to hear what you think about it, but I think we're in borderline panic mode already for this season. What do you think?
I think we're already there, to be honest with you. And I hate that it has to get to this point, but they lose the game to Penn, where they're kind of outplayed the whole game. Then they lose at Ole Miss, which wasn't pretty. And this is the worst loss that Temple's had in the Ken Palm era. Like, this is a sub 300 team they just lost to. This is easily the worst loss that I think, and they've had some bad losses just this year. This is the worst loss that Aaron McKee's had, for sure. I mean, this is one of the worst losses that they've had in the last 10 years or so. And it comes down to 2 things for me. So number 1, you mentioned the rebounding. And number 2 for me is effort. And then I guess you could throw discipline in there. But for me, it's rebounding and it's effort. We've seen this team get out rebounded by teams that get out scrapped by teams. You saw the Wagner game. I mean, they got out physical, they got out tough, they got out rebounded in that game by a smaller team. And the same thing happened here. But not only do you mention the rebounding disparity of 40 to 29, how about Maryland Eastern Shore grabbing 17 offensive rebounds? They were quicker to the glass. They were more physical. It just seemed like they wanted it more. And then to my effort point here, I'm not going to point the finger at anybody. I'm not going to individually call out guys because that's not what I'm here to do. But there was a few plays in this game, one early in the game. So Nick Jourdain checks in. He was the first guy off the bench to spell John Cooch after it was Okpoma who did it the game before. He missed a dunk, and instead of getting back on defense, like kind of like pumped his fist as to like, man, I should have had that. Didn't get back on defense. And not that this is his fault that it happened. Maryland Eastern Shore scores an and one. They threw the ball up the court very fast. It's not like Nick Jourdain was going to block that, but still, it's not about that. It's like, as a team, like your standard needs to be, you need to get back on defense. That's just what needs to happen. There was another play off an inbounds play. There was a quick missed shot. A guy on Maryland Eastern Shore leaked out in transition, was by himself. He slipped. Instead of having an open layup and scoring, he slipped, is trying to get the ball. Another Maryland Eastern Shore player was the one that went down there and got the ball. And then they got 2 offensive rebounds on that possession. And then they got a third that ended up in a layup. And then there was a play where they had a 3-on-1 in the first, and this is all in the first half, by the way. They had a 3-on-1. Caleb Battle throws up a lob that he should not have thrown. He should have threw the ball to somebody else and gotten the ball out quickly or went up himself. There was no need for him to try a lob and to try something fancy. They turn the ball over, and then they score off that too. Like there's just some effort plays where you have a 3-on-1 like that. The 3 guys don't really get back on defense, and there's a score. And now, again, like I said, that was just in the first half. It's plays like that where you don't get back on defense, you don't box out, you don't rebound. Somebody wants it, grabs it from you. That's going to bury you. You know, that's not winning. Those aren't winning plays. It's not what winning teams do. You know, you never have any time you see a good team come March, you see a good team that's on the verge of winning a conference tournament, getting an automatic bid. You never question their effort. You never question. You know, you never look at bad body. And unfortunately, there was a lot of bad body language in this game from guys not getting back on defense again. But you don't, when you have a good team, when you have a team that's consistently winning, you look at Villanova. These guys turn the ball over, they clap, they huddle up after a free throw. They don't sulk and do these things. Winning teams don't do this. And they lost. They had a really, really bad loss to a team they should have never lose to, regardless of who's healthy.
Shouldn't have even been close.
I'll get to the Damian Dunley. I think he has a concussion. Reports were that he walked out of the Liacouras Center with some assistance and with some sunglasses on. So I'm sure he does have a concussion. I don't know what his status is for tomorrow. And I'll leave that where it is, and I'll get to the rest of the game. But for me, it's mainly I saw this game. I said it's rebounding and its effort. I felt like that was lacking here. But alarms got to be set. I don't care who's hurt. You shouldn't lose to this team. Now, you know, unfortunately with this team, we've seen them get hurt a lot in the past. They don't have Jamil Reynolds. They're going to be without Damian Dunn tomorrow. I don't know. I would err on the side of caution when it comes to head injuries, of course. So we don't know if we'll see him. But we got to see what's happening here with the center spot. That's something we'll continue to keep our eye on, because it was Nick Jourdain that came in, but then he didn't get back on defense. But then he also was able to score the ball. He had 3 blocks again, does what he do as a mobile rim protector, even as a smaller guy can block a lot of shots. But we didn't see Manuel Okpoma in this game. So I wonder if that was just an experiment to give him some time to see what he could do with an opportunity, because they played a lot with Nick Jourdain last year when all the bigs got hurt. So that's something to keep your eye on. But the Temple's had a lot of disappointing losses this year, unfortunately. But this is the worst one for me that really drives into rock bottom, in my opinion. I don't really know how you get much lower than this when on the your last game before conference play, your last tune-up at home, you drop this one. I don't know how much lower we can get here. And it's really a shame, because we talked glowingly about this team's effort last year and how we thought they could legitimately make a run here and get to the tournament. So, I rambled on for a while, but that's what I saw there, and it's really concerning. And in my opinion, the Owls are rock bottom right now. I don't really know how you get much lower than this.
Listen, I mean, don't apologize because there's a lot to ramble on. I mean, you encapsulated it perfectly. This is rock bottom. If it happens to get worse than this, I don't even know what will happen. One thing I did want to ask you though, before we moved on from Temple, we talk about them being at rock bottom. Obviously, they lost a couple bye games this year. Had some great moments when they beat Nova, for example, but you know, despite the talent this team has, they play as a bunch of talented basketball players and not as a talented basketball team. And when you have something like that, yes, you can look at the players, but I think you also have to look at the coach. And love Aaron McKee. I think he can be great, but he hasn't really shown a ton of that, especially this year. Last year, yes, but this year, no. And a couple years before that too. So it does bear the question: is his seat hot?
Unfortunately, yes. And I really didn't want to have to say that because he seemed like the ideal guy to. I don't really know what more you would want in a head coaching prospect when he got the job. I mean, he
Nothing. I mean,
from
he was
North
an
Philly.
assistant. He can recruit in Philly
Yeah.
or another friend, Dunphy.
There's nobody else that you would want there to recruit at Temple. He's from North Philly. He went to Simon Gratz. He played at Temple in their glory days under John Chaney. He played for the Sixers, was an assistant for the Sixers, and was an assistant at Temple for a number of years too. So I really wanted this to work out. I think he's like literally got the ideal prerequisites that you would want from someone to take this job. You can't ask for anything more with all the connections and the roots that he has here. But it's hot. I don't think anybody can deny it. His seat's hot. And unfortunately for him, what also doesn't help him out is that there's a new president at the school and there's a new athletic director at the school that's relatively new. And they got rid of Rod Carey. They weren't, Arthur Johnson didn't waste any time getting rid of Rod Carey.
Oh,
Once
listen, that was
performing.
listen. You want to talk about how bad Temple basketball has been this year, but the last few years of Temple football have been absolutely brutal. Rod Carey was just eons even worse than anything we could ever imagine.
And I
Aaron
don't
McKee's
mean,
not on that level, but it is
of
a new
course
regime.
not. Of course not. And I don't mean to compare them at all because Rod Carey was terrible, but there's a new administration there that wasn't the people that hired him. I don't think that works out for him. And when they see how attendance is down and how they haven't even gotten close to postseason play the years that he's been there. And again, you got to throw out the COVID year because there was so many cancellations and Temple hardly got off the ground with all the COVID pauses that they had. But I think when the administration looks at this year and looks at his tenure, his seat's definitely hot. I mean, it's not really promising. Like they're still losing these games in year 4 of Aaron McKee. Like I don't know what we're supposed to do or like how he can dig himself out of it. And and it's not the fact that they lost, it's the way they lost too. For that team to get outplayed and outwilled like that, it's very, very disappointing. So his seat's hot. I don't think they will think about firing him at all until after the year. I don't think firing him during the season solves anything. I think I think actually, if you were to fire him now, you're just giving up. That's you giving up on the season and not even attempting to give it a chance. So we can revisit this, I guess, after the season ends, because I think at the end of the season we'll have a pretty good idea as to if he's going to stay or not. Because he's only got one more year on his contract, so they could just let him play it out and say, "Hey, you get like it's make or break. Like you either do good and we renew it, or you don't and we don't renew your contract." So potentially they could do something like that. So I don't even know what names come to mind as a replacement, because I don't even think Temple thought they'd be in this position. I thought they had their guy. They were grooming him to be the head coach for a while, and a lot of people were excited about him. But to answer your question, in short form, yes, the seat's hot. This is a results driven business, just like any sports are, and he's not getting it done right now. So yes, absolutely, his seat is hot.
All right. I mean, listen, you answered that pretty perfectly, I think. It's unfortunate that his seat is heating up because I like the guy. I think he's a basketball lifer. I mean, at this point, like you said, he played 6th man of the year for the Sixers, played under John Chaney. which just makes it even more disappointing that we lack the toughness and the grit that he learned under Coach Chaney. That's what those Temple's teams in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s were known for. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully they can turn around. Like I was going to say, there's a lot of basketball left still. There's still 2/3 of the season pretty much, but it's not looking good for the Owls right now.
Nope.
So hopefully they can turn it around, but we shall see. All right, real quick, one more game to go over before we get into the upcoming games. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this. A team in the Big Five did not lose a bye game. Or I know a different team in the Big Five did not lose a bye game. St. Joe's beat Central Connecticut State 83-66. Cam Brown had 24 points on 9 of 18 from the field. Kasper Klaczyk, 21 on 7 of 8. Great shooting there from him. Eric Reynolds, 15 points on 6 of 14. They shot 49% from the field as a team and 38.7% from three, and they did force 16 turnovers. So, unlike the other two teams that had bye games, this team took care of business. So, anything you want to add real quick from this one?
So if there's one thing I want to say, last episode I talked about how, St. Joe's wants to win and they want to be consistent here. They're going to need more out of Kasper Klaczyk. So good shooting game for him in this game, being a 7 of 8. They're going to obviously need a lot of mileage and a lot of production out of him if they want to win games in the A-10 because unlike La Salle, who's got a game at Howard on Thursday, they're done with non-conference play. So they're going to end 6-6. Good for St. Joe's, beating Sacred Heart and then beating Central Connecticut State last week, picking up 2 W's, moving into conference play, where right off the bat, they're going to play St. Louis, who started out hot this year, is fallen off and is now 8-5, but they're going to host St. Louis at their place. So they're going to have a top tier A-10 team come to them, which isn't really saying much because, the conference is horrible this year. A-10 is not very good, and they're probably only a 1-bid league unless a miracle happens. So good for St. Joe's to win too, to get in the win column twice before conference play starts. A good showing from Kasper Klaczyk, who over the last 4 games going into last week hadn't been shooting the ball well. Good to see him back out there putting up numbers because they're going to need him. So, that's all I got on St. Joe's. Again, it's 2 games that they should win, but I think if we learned anything about the Big Five this year, we'll take wins any way we can get them. So good for St. Joe's going 2-0 last week. Having a little bit of time off as they're not going to play until Saturday. So good for them taking care of business because we make it sound like it's easy, but here in the Big Five this year, it hasn't been all that easy winning bye games. So good for them and a good game from Kasper Klaczyk because last game I pointed out, you think he was 1 for 9 and 1 for 10 in his last 4 games from 3. And if they're going to win games, they're just going to need him to shoot the ball better. So nice showing from him on the verge of conference play for the Hawks.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely an important piece to their success, like you've talked about and we've talked about. Listen, this is what happens when you take care of business against teams you should win. You don't get a ton of time spent on it, which is probably a good thing, honestly. So Temple and La Salle, if you want to have positive light on the show and not spend a whole bunch of time going over the negatives, win the games you're supposed to. It shouldn't be that hard. St. Joe's did it. You guys can do it too. So that's all we got for the games of the past week. Now we're going to go over a few games that are coming up this week. First of all, we have Temple and East Carolina. A little bit of a start of the American action for the Owls. That game is at 7:00 on Wednesday. Just a little bit about ECU. Javon Smalls leading a score of 17.2 points per game, and Brandon Johnson, the leading rebounder, 9.1 rebounds per game. I don't have a ton else on this ECU squad, but it definitely is going to be a spot where Temple needs to bounce back, and they need to start off conference play on the right foot after 3 brutal losses.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you seeing from this game?
So look, I'm not even going to spend any time talking about ECU because this is all about Temple, and they have a lot they got to figure out. They need to respond after the last game that they had. They can't let this thing spiral out of control because, to be quite honest with you, it's getting to that point. 1-2 losses, and 1 or 2 losses to open conference play. If you get to a 5-game losing streak with the games that they're losing, this thing could get out of control really, really quickly, and I think could seal the fate of the coaching staff potentially. I don't want it to get to that point, but you start to feel that way because looks like they win a couple games. Then you think, hey, they can maybe string together a win streak here, be a little bit consistent, but they win 3-4 games in a row and they respond by losing 3 in a row to teams that I felt like they could have beaten. They could have went 3-0 in this stretch. So number one, the center minutes is going to be a big thing. Are we going to see any Emmanuel Okpomo? I think Nick Jourdain just gives him more versatility, more mobility on the perimeter, can switch onto some guards, can slide with guys, is a better shot blocker, even though he's not as big. Can stretch the floor a little bit, just gives you a little more offense, even though I feel like he can be a little hesitant, a little passive at times. He still just provides more offensively for you and defensively as well, producing and blocking shots. So we'll just see what happens with the center minutes. But also, I don't really think this is a game they can win if Damian Dunn doesn't play. We need to see what his status is coming off the concussion. I'm sure they just had to fly down to Greenville for this game, probably tonight or sometime today. And if that's the case and he's got a concussion, I don't know if they would send him on a plane that would be fluctuating altitudes like that.
The
So
Dolphins probably would, but I don't know if the Temple
yeah,
Owls would.
which man, let's hope they don't do it. Let's hope they don't do that.
Yeah.
The Dolphins don't do that this week. But
No.
yeah, college basketball is hard because it's hard to find these things out sometimes. What a college basketball player's status is. So it'll probably be a thing we find out maybe tomorrow morning, or maybe it could be something we find out right before tip off, or we just find out when we look at the box score and we see the starters. So his health is something that's huge in this game because I really don't know. This is a team that's been kind of struggling offensively, and Damian Dunn's kind of been part of that. He was scorching hot and was unstoppable to start the year, and we've just kind of seen him fall off and not be as dominant as we know he can be. So if he's out for this game, who's going to step in? Who's going to play? Shane Dezzoni got a couple minutes in the Maryland Eastern Shore game. If Damian Dunn can't go, I mean, he's for sure going to be called into action more. So, and for a guy who hasn't played that much this year, is probably going to be asked to score the ball as well. So, for me, it's the center minutes is something that I'm always going to keep an eye on because we need to see what the best course of action is. Maybe even if Jourdain keeps playing well, they slide him into the starting lineup instead of John Cooch. So, it's the centers for me, how the minutes get distributed as to who's playing well and who you can ride as a viable replacement for Jamil Reynolds. But for this game in particular, it's the health of Damian Dunn, because if he's in and he's healthy, I think the open is a 1-point favorite. Odds makers are telling you Temple's got a very good chance to win the game. But if he can't go, you can key in on Caleb Battle, and then I don't really know who's going to explode for you offensively. So that's what I'm looking at for this game. But they need a win in the worst way possible. Of all the teams, and I know La Salle just played a stinker too, but of all the teams in the Big Five, this is the team that needs to win the most going into conference play. So they need it badly. They have to have this one, whether Damian Dunn's there or not. They have to have it. They absolutely have to have this one.
They do. And I know Damian Dunn's from the North Carolina, that Greenville area, somewhere near there. I forget exactly where, but he's from North Carolina. So I know this is typically a homecoming game for him, but if he is concussed, do not get on a plane. Although at this point that we're recording, the plane would have already been gotten on. So I guess we'll find out on Wednesday morning. But yeah, not good from the Owls, and they better step up because time is ticking, even though it's only about to be January. We're at the end of December here, but time's still ticking, especially when you lose 3 in a row after winning 4 in a row. They honestly probably could have made it 7 if they really just stepped up and did it. I know Jamil Reynolds getting hurt's not ideal, but yeah, not good. All right. Another game on Wednesday. We have this is a matchup that's going to be very exciting. Villanova taking on UConn. And look, what can we say about UConn? They are one of the top teams in the nation this year. They're a title favorite. They have a Player of the Year candidate in Adam Sanogo. They have a great coach in Dan Hurley. This team is loaded, and a lot of people weren't expecting them to be a great offensive team going into the year, just a great defensive team, but they've kind of stepped up offensively too. So what can you tell me about this matchup between them? And there's Nova team that has talent, but obviously they started off pretty bad. They've been playing better lately, but this should be a fun one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Me personally, if you asked me, and Purdue's had a great year. A ton of great wins for Purdue. They beat Duke. They beat Gonzaga. I think like Purdue. I'm not mad that they're the number one team because they have the schedule that warrants that. But in my opinion, I do think this is honestly the best team in the country. They don't really have a glaring weakness. They have a very good point guard in Tristan Newton who can score the ball and has some experience. He actually came over from East Carolina, um, and won't be playing against the Owls because he moved over to UConn. They have a very good head coach, like you said, in Danny Hurley, who they say teams embody their coach. And for a guy who's fiery like him and is very demanding of his guys, they certainly play that way. Like you said, Adama Sanogo is a force on the boards and in the paint is a guy who can easily throw up a double-double any night of the week without even thinking about it. Um, an NBA, two potential NBA wings here. One definitely in Jordan Hawkins, who's an over 40% three-point shooter this year. And then how about Andre Jackson? You want to talk about glue guys? I mean, not only is he a glue guy, he might be one of the best ones in college basketball. He's a supreme athlete, can defend well, can jump out the gym, but he also is a very, very good facilitator for this team as well. He knows his role. He can find teammates. He averages 5 or 6 assists a game. Like, doesn't throw up these crazy numbers, but he contributes to winning in a lot of different ways for this team, whether it's playing defense, rebounding, scoring when he can, facilitating, and he's really an excellent passer. I mean, he's hardly turned the ball over at all and can find teammates. So this team doesn't really have a weakness. Then you look at them last year; they couldn't shoot the ball, and Danny Hurley was like, "Okay, I'll go get Joey Calcaterra from San Diego. I'll get Naeem Aline from Virginia Tech. I'll get Asan Diarra from Texas A&M. I need shooters. Bam, I'll go get some in the portal that have been at schools for 2-3 years, have experience, can shoot the ball, and then brings in a good freshman class with Alex Caravan, who started a bunch of games, and then Donovan Clingan. You know, if Cam Whitmore was still out, he's by far the Big East freshman of the year. He's 7'2". He's enormous. I mean, he's huge in the paint. He blocks shots. He rebounds. Like there's so many different ways this UConn team can hurt you, and I don't really see a total glaring weakness with this team that you can exploit. Like they're just that good and they're that deep and experienced as well. So this is easily their hardest game. Going up to the XL Center and having to play in Hartford against UConn is tough. Nova lost a nail biter there last year, which I think they kind of got hosed on, calling a jump ball on Gillespie that I thought he got fouled. But
Yeah.
man, this team is good. Like I said, I personally have them as my number one team. I think they're that good. I don't see a glaring weakness. They're deep, they're big, they can rebound, they can defend, they can shoot, they can score. Like there's not really a weakness with this team across the board. They are very, very good. And Nova's going to have to play an A+ game to beat them. Nothing against Nova, but that's just how good this team is. You know, friend, and especially what doesn't help Nova here is that they have two giants in Klingon and Sonogo in the middle. And they don't rebound very well.
They don't no one to stop them.
Nova does. So there's just so many different ways that UConn can hurt you. They're such a good team. They're so deep. So many different ways they can play. It's going to be a very, very tough game for them. This is a very, very good team, but this is also going to be a measuring stick game for Nova. Yeah, St. John's is 11-1 going into that last game, but like I said, I don't think St. John's 11-1 record is exactly matches what they are right now. But this UConn team hasn't lost the game yet, and that matches them because they are that good. So now we're going to see Nova go up against one of the premier teams, not only in the Big East, but in the entire country. And with Cam Whitmore coming back, and he actually hasn't played all that well the last couple of games, not as well as he did his first three. We're going to find out a lot about Villanova tomorrow and how they can match up with the big guys. You know, if this is a team that is going to be able to compete, or if this is a team that maybe is going to have to hold their breath come Selection Sunday. But this is a great team they're playing against, and this is a great opportunity for them to secure a huge win. But also, we're going to find out a lot about Villanova, if they're for real, or if, you know, when they had to step up in competition, maybe they're not ready just yet because they are a little bit young. So we're going to find out a lot about Villanova, but this is going to be a great game. Definitely the marquee game in the Big Five this week. And honestly, one of the marquee games this entire week in college basketball, but it's an absolutely huge game for them. And I can't wait to watch this. We're going to find out a lot about them.
Yeah, I think litmus test is a great term for this because, like we mentioned, this UConn team is like championship good. Like they're not just like a really good team. Like last year they were a really good team, but they were never like a championship contender. This year they're they're up there. I don't know if I would put them above Houston. That you could argue that on a different, we don't have time for that on this show. We can definitely argue that some other time, but I mean, they're one of the very top best, at least top 5 teams in the country right now, and a title favorite. And they're going to their place to play this game. So this is a very tough test for this Nova team. They don't have the size to compete with some of those guys, like you mentioned. But it's not that they're untalented. They, Cam Whitmore, if he could step up and play like he did in his first 3 games, prove that he's the best freshman on the floor, definitely. They'll have ways to compete. They just need to shoot the ball well. And they don't make mistakes a lot, so that will definitely help them a lot. So it'll be really interesting to see. But I do think Nova wins this game. I mean, I do think Connecticut wins this game. Did not mean to say Nova. I got Nova on my mind. I think it'll be like 7-8 point Connecticut victory. Nothing crazy. I do think Nova can keep them close, give them a game. But ultimately, I do think UConn wins. So that's where we go for that. One more game on Wednesday here, though. I don't even think we really even are going to talk about this at all, but definitely worth a mention. Penn is finally back in action. They're playing Wilkes. It's a tune-up game. It's not even like they're having a bye game against Maryland, Eastern Shore, La Salle. Like Wilkes isn't D1, correct? They're not even D1.
They're D3. Their schedule. They're going to play Kings. They're going to play probably Misericordia schools. DeSales schools
around the PA area that aren't.
Yeah, they're going to play the small D3 schools in the PA area. This is nothing but a tune-up game because they're going to play Brown coming up here, and they're going to kick off Ivy League play. So they've been inactive for a while since their win against Temple. But that's all this is. I'm not going to act like I know anything about Wilkes. I'm not here. I'm not here to do that. But
listen, if Penn loses to Wilkes, we can have a bigger conversation next episode.
Don't even.
If that happens, we can talk about that more in depth next episode.
But this is just the tune-up. Yeah, they haven't played in a while. They've been inactive. They're going to play somebody. And then
they're going to step on a basketball floor. They're going to play. Yeah. They're going to play 40 minutes.
Exactly. They're going to play 40 minutes. They like I said, they've been inactive, and then they're going to hop into Ivy League play. So we'll talk more about that. But yeah, just a tune-up for them. They're back in action. That's all I got about that. Like I said, I'm not going to act like I have any stats that I can pull or know anything about Wilkes, but they're going to play somebody on Wednesday. So there is that because we haven't seen the Quakers for a while.
Yeah, they've been off for a couple of weeks. So we'll definitely have more on them on our next episode and going forward, obviously. But they haven't played in a couple of weeks, like we just mentioned, and they don't really have a game worth talking about. I hope, knock on wood, I hope I'm not like jinxing them or anything because that would be really embarrassing. But we'll get to the Quakers. Don't you worry, Quaker fans. All right, one last game this stretch of the week here on Thursday. Like you mentioned, LaSalle taking on Howard. This is a fairly even matchup. Howard's ranked 268th in Ken Palm. LaSalle's 260. So these teams are right there. In terms of Howard, their leading scorer and assist man is a man by the name of Steve Settle III. Is averaging 11.9 points per game and 6.1 rebounds per game. So a lot of what they do goes through him. Like we kind of mentioned, this is their last non-conference game before they kick off Atlantic 10 play. You hope they bounce back after some of the showings they've had, especially against Lafayette, losing by 25 to the Leopards at home. What is something that we can see in this game that is different than what they've been showing the last few games that can lead them to a victory?
Just even if you're struggling offensively, just play 40 minutes of defense. Try and play the most complete defensive game that you can. Because if you have a team that's going to run the score up on you and score almost 100 points, LaSalle's not going to be in this. So they're going to have to play defense. Steve Settle's actually a nice player. If you remember last year during Martin Luther King Day, CBS did a HBCU Classic where Notre Dame went down to Howard and played him, and it was a pretty close game. Howard played Notre Dame very tough. Steve Settle a pretty good game, so he's a nice player and a guy they're going to have to stop. But LaSalle, for me, it's all about defense. defense, defense, defense. You can control that. Can't control if your shots are going to go in. You can control that. So defensively, if there's a guy that's a good 3-point shooter, don't go under screens. Chase him off and try and get him inside the 3-point line to somewhere where he's not very comfortable. 3-point defense, offensive rebounds, stuff like that. Not turn the ball over. And the thing is, they did very well. They turned the ball over 6 times. Now we don't really know. We just saw them turn it over 25 times, and they only turned it over 6. So clearly, there's a lot of variance with them as far as doing that. But defensively is where I'm going to be looking for in this game. Again, just like Temple, who needs to respond off a loss. This LaSalle team has to do the same thing. But for me, defensively is where I'm going to be keying in most of this game. If they miss shots offensively, if they get good looks and they miss, fine, you can't control that. But defensively, if they have a poor game, they're going to lose again, and they're going to go into A-10 play with 2 bad losses, giving up a lot of points, which probably won't bode well for them long term, having to then play the grind of an A-10 schedule. So defense, 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 defense. Rebounding, they could win a rebounding battle. That probably wouldn't be too bad either. But defensively, they got to play good team defense. They have to rotate. They have to get out to shooters. Limit Howard to 1 shot. Very, very basic stuff. But when you don't do that, you can give up 90 points sometimes. So defensively, that's where the growth has to happen here. If they want to win games, they just got to play better defense.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like when you see a Fran Dunphy coach team, you don't really expect them to not play defense or not have that effort level. Not the saying that they haven't had effort, but the defense is definitely lacked. Leg up 90 points to Lafayette, like we mentioned. So definitely something to look forward to in this game. Also, just guys stepping up a little bit on the offensive end too. I know, we just mentioned that can't always control shots falling, but you can at least try. And I feel like too often with this LaSalle team, we only see 1 or 2 guys in double figures. And they just need more. I don't know where they're going to get it from. Brantley's been that guy. Nickelberry needs to step up. Actually, that's definitely one guy they can get it from. You've seen contributions from Anwar Gill. You've seen, contributions from Akash Josias, and the Drame brothers, I think, have been quiet lately too. So they need to just kind of flex their muscles a little bit with their depth that they have. They have some decent depth. We've talked about it on the show. Nothing overwhelming, but it's there. Definitely need to see some of that. So definitely something to look forward to for this game against Howard on Thursday. That's all I got. I'm going to blow my nose one more time before this episode's over because I really need to. Apologies in advance. But Copestick, do you have anything final to say here on this 13th edition of the Big Five Pod?
So I do have 2 things real quick. Just wanted to say something. Rest in peace to brother Ed Sheehy from LaSalle, who passed away, unfortunately, right before Christmas. He was 76 years old. He did his undergrad at LaSalle, was in the history department for a very, very long time, was a big part of the LaSalle community, not only as the team chaplain for the basketball team, but also as a professor and as a member of the community, as a member of the campus. So condolences and thoughts to brother Ed Sheehy's family and to LaSalle as well, because he was a guy who was such a big part of the campus there. And then next, did want to address Arthur Johnson's comments. I tweeted out something from our Twitter page about it the other day, but he came out and said, which I personally am not a fan of, because we've talked a lot about how we like the Palestra, we like the Big Five doubleheaders that are there, and the turnout hasn't been great. But also, you look at some of the stuff that he said, doesn't exactly echo like things are going to get any better. So he said, that's not our home game, to the Temple News. Want to make sure we give credit then as 2 Temple alumni. We want to give student media some love there.
Absolutely.
That's not our home game when speaking about games being played at the Palestra, where Temple is or is not the designated home team, because there wasn't very good turnout, certainly during the doubleheader against LaSalle. It was a pretty solid turnout, I guess, for the Penn game. But listen, there's a very unique basketball tradition in the city. It's not going to get back to what it was. And I get it. We're past that. There's something that needs to be said about him, at least saying like, hey, it's not what it once was. We understand that. He just kind of put that out there, said what we were all thinking. But at the same time, things aren't going to get better. We're not going to see big turnouts. We're not going to see, raucous crowds at the Palestra for Big Five games if this is what the attitude is going to be from the administrators, especially when, and I know me and you have gone on the bus for football games before, especially when you can't provide transportation to a place that is shorter in mileage and shorter in minutes wise distance, time wise, to get to the Palestra. There is never a shortage of buses to send students down to the link for a football game.
No.
There's not. There's not. So I just think it's funny. He was also quoted saying, again, I am pushing you to roll out of bed and walk across the street. I'm not asking you to go down there to jump into that when speaking about the Palestra. However, you are provided all the transportation that you need to go to a football game, even though they have hardly won any games the last couple of years. And I get it, the coaching change and Rod Carey was a disaster, but you can't send anybody down there. And guess what? You won't. The Palestra doesn't hold that as nearly as many people as the link. You're not going to have to send nearly as many buses to go down there, especially if kids have to reserve their tickets ahead of, beforehand. So
send 2 buses. Like, that's enough.
I think maybe a little bit more than that, but also like as a guy who used to go to Temple and was at the Palestra a couple times, like it's also not very hard to hop on at Cecil B. Moore, take it down to City Hall, free exchange to Market Frankfurt line, take it westbound to 69th Street. You get off at 30th to 33rd, bam, 10-minute walk. So sure, the Big Five might not, it's clearly not where it was 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. But when you have administrators who have this attitude as well, and sure, is he speaking the truth about the popularity? Sure. But when your attitude is this, that you almost seem to not care about trying to get it back there and doing your part to get it back there, that's why it's struggling the way it is. It's people with attitudes like that where they seemingly don't want to help. And they're like, no, we want to have it at our arena, at our place. And you want to kind of forget about all that tradition is kind of why we find the Big Five to be in the position that it is now. So I wanted to make sure I said something about that because I did tweet something out. But my main point being there, like, it's funny how you're like, oh, you don't have to go down to the Palestra, but we'll send you down to the link.
Yeah, it's hypocritical. With
like 2 or 3 different places to get picked up on campus, a ton of buses. There's never a shortage of that, right? But we can't send anybody down to the Palestra. So I wish things were different. I'm sure we both do. We want to see doubleheaders sold out. We want to see sold out Big Five games and have that popularity come back. But it's unfortunately people like Arthur Johnson, the way they think about it, that it's just not going to happen. So
it's that along with I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's that along with Villanova like not playing any games at the Palestra ever. Right now they're the marquee team in the Big Five, and they have been for the last decade, and they don't play there. They don't it's almost like they're like disassociating the Big Five a little bit, you know what I mean? Like not in terms of their schedule, obviously, because they still play the games and everything, but they refuse to go to the Palestra. I feel like based on Arthur Johnson's comments, Temple, I don't think they're ever going to refuse, but like they're not doing anything to help. And if they want Big Five basketball to be like it was before, not that it might not get close for a while. Obviously, the teams have to get better too. That always helps. But try, you know what I mean? Like it's not even just about having a home game in the Leah Core Center versus going to Penn. Again, not that it's that far, but like it's just like if you want the exposure for all your schools, it's going to help your school too. If there's a packed house at the Palestra for the Big Five doubleheader, granted, they shouldn't have done it on a Wednesday night. We've talked about that before. But like, it's just going to help. And if money is the incentive, I think it'll make you money if you give people these experiences that, hey, this is really cool. I want to check out these teams more often. Like, you are part of that. That's going to help you out, Arthur Johnson. So, yeah, I didn't really like those comments either. So, hopefully things will change. It does not look like it right now. But we'll see. That's very disappointing to hear from Temple's athletic director. And I guess my final thought is for your own health and safety, please stop watching the Denver Broncos. They played on Christmas Day, not even Christmas Eve. They played on Christmas Day. And I know we weren't together, obviously, but I know you were watching. And that probably ruined your Christmas. And Christmas only comes once a year. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. I know they fired Nathaniel Hackett, so it's it's going to get a little better. But just for your own health and safety, uh, just don't tune into CBS these last couple of weeks here. There's a lot of college basketball on. It's bowl season for college football. We got the college football playoff coming up on Saturday. The championship game obviously will be following the following on the 9th, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's on the 9th. So there's a lot of other things going on. MLB hot stove is hot right now. You don't need to watch Denver Broncos. You don't need to do it. Just don't.
Yeah, you might be onto something there. It's a real shame when you go into a year with expectations for your team and they just blow it, and they're a meme and they're an embarrassment, and they're fighting on the sidelines every other week, and they're getting into each other's face, and the head coach has no control over any of it. And then you fire a head coach after 15 games, and Urban Meyer only he got fired after 13. And that just tells you how much of a disaster they've been. So I could talk about that for an hour.
We're not going to get into that. I just wanted to say for your
nobody
health and
cares
safety,
either, because the Eagles are 13-2, and
oh yeah, they're great.
even worse when you got to watch the Eagles dominate every week and play very well. So
I mean, I had to watch Zach Wilson the last 2 weeks, so it's not much better. But again, we can get into that, and that would take a whole nother hour.
We're gonna need another pod for that.
We're gonna need another pod for that, so we're not gonna get into that. But
not even worth the time.
No, but for this silly little pod, we do appreciate everyone tuning in and supporting as always. I know we took the week off. It was around the holidays, so it's okay. We gotta spend some time with our families and whatnot too. So also wasn't a lot of action going on, but regardless, we do appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe on our YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Big Five Pod. Definitely make sure you listen to our audio only versions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And that's pretty much, I think that's all I got. Yeah, no, that's definitely all I got. So until next time, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you later this week.